being a part of something like Dallas has going on right now, seemingly accepting at minimum that you are like 1B, probably the number 2, in a way that you didn't seem to be willing to do kind of in other instances, not having any, at least public hiccups with anything outside of basketball. I think he's the one thing that gets missed is I think he's always been a solid teammate. Like most dudes would tell you that they liked him, but I think that this would go a long way for him. I also would just add, Nico Harrison and Mike Finn and company for having the faith that pairing. We talked about it at length when it wasn't really working initially. It was really clunky. What do you do with that? Having the faith in their vision to stick with it and then execute. They're a good example for me of what I talk about all the time, which is what's your roadmap? Like show me the map, show me how we're going to do it, and then not being like hasty and moving all over the place and straying from the navigation. Like kind of stay in the course, and we're going to execute these moves when they present themselves. And so I would add them to the mix, but I agree with everything, especially the Kyrie part.
I want to stay on Kyrie with you, Raja. What is the biggest difference? Me and Howard talked about this on Friday, just in terms of like his outward leadership with this Dallas Mavericks team. And I don't think we've been able to see in his previous 2 or 3 stops. And in Boston, it seemed like he was talking at the young group. You guys don't know what you guys don't know what you guys are getting into, and it didn't seem like the message was really flowing well when he was a quote unquote leader in Boston. And then we know what happened in Brooklyn. But anecdotally, and also what you've seen on television, what's the biggest difference you've seen in Kyrie from a leadership standpoint from the time where you saw him in Cleveland and you were working close with him to now, where he seems like a guy that this roster is rallying around?
Yeah, well, first of all, in Cleveland, it wasn't his job to really lead. That was LeBron. When you get LeBron on the team, everyone kind of cedes a bit of leadership responsibility. It becomes LeBron's world, right? And we're going to be indoctrinated into his school of winning and his culture, and this is the way we're going to do it. And so, Kyrie was like everyone else in that way. I watched him from afar when he was in places like Boston and Brooklyn. And here's the way I see it. And this is just my opinion on it. I always got the sense when dealing with Kyrie, and I've said this before and I've caught flack before, that he was a good person, a good dude. He treated me as such. He treated my kids and my wife as such. We've never had an issue. He's very intelligent. He's very soulful. And I feel like he was searching for something. When I watched him, it was like he was searching for something, searching for some peace from within, some inner peace, like some familial peace. And I think he found it. And that's what you see when you watch him lead with the Mavs. There's a maturity about him. There's a security about who he is and how he fits in, and what the organization around him needs from him. And I think you can't discount that when you get to a very comfortable place with who you are and what you believe and what your family situation is, and you're not worried about what anyone's saying about it or feeling like there's something missing from you. And I always got that sense. And again, this is just me, but I was around him very closely for a while. Was looking for something, searching for something. What? I don't know. But that's what I get. And that's what comes through to me when I watch him on that team. Just at peace and very comfortable.
Reputationally, what will this do for him, a championship, Howard, league-wide? What do you think it will do?
I mean, league-wide, the thing is, players have always had really high regard for Kyrie. Now, some of them played with him and wouldn't necessarily want to play with him again for all kinds of reasons, but they like him and respect him, and a lot of them very much look up to him, especially the younger players. And just, his skill level's off the charts. His competitive drive is off the charts. Like, I don't think there's any restoring of anything that needs to be done amongst most of his peers. It's more the way that like the broader NBA community looks at him, right? It's us in the media, it's coaches and GMs, and other executives and scouts, like other people who are in more of a position to just observe and how people have valued him, right? Again, something we touched on briefly Friday, but Kyrie's value had bottomed out when he was in Brooklyn. And he himself noted it at one point in a press conference on his last media day in Brooklyn about the fact that teams didn't want him. And at the time that the Mavericks traded for him, I mean, think about how little they traded for him over, when at the time, I think people wondered if they were giving up too much because Dorian Finney-Smith was really important to the Mavericks' success.
I think there's a lot of people that forget the context of the trade when they talk about the fleecing involved. They just forget about what happened beforehand. Like there's not a lot of context when people talk about the fleecing of the Nets in that deal.
It's fair for us to constantly reevaluate trades, but it's also really important for people to remember the context at the moment a trade happened. The context of that moment was Kyrie Irving demanded a trade days before the trade deadline. So the Nets were under the gun and his trade value was zilch. And so to get Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and a first-round pick, I think that was the whole package.
Me and Raja were asking if Kyrie was going to be in the league in a few years, during the height of his Kyrie-ness.
It was a reasonable question.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to defend us, I mean, if it had continued on the trajectory with the stuff that was going on, I think it was reasonable.
Yeah, this thing that happens now where it's like, oh, everybody owes Kyrie an apology. No one owes Kyrie an apology. We're judging things based on what Kyrie himself had said and done. The teams that got rid of him, that didn't want him around, or, they're all doing it based on what he had said and done in that moment. His value at that time was low because of the things he had said and done. So he evolved. That is to his credit. So if, he should get the praise now. Absolutely. And he earned the criticism back when the criticism came. But it is to his credit that he evolved. Not everybody does, right? We'd all like to think that we're constantly evolving as human beings. We could be reflective and better ourselves. And some do and some don't. And it's never linear. And here it is. Like Kyrie, to his credit, didn't just rescue his career. I think he has salvaged a lot of his reputation and shown that he is capable of being a great teammate and a great leader. He's not just fitting in; he's a leader there. Mm-hmm. Like that's bigger than just like going and hitching your wagon to one of the greatest players we've ever seen in Luka. He's gone and been a really important presence because like Luka maybe is not geared personality wise to be like that kind of leader, and Kyrie is the one who comes in with the credibility of having won a championship and been to 3 finals. So, all that's to his credit. But real quick though, before I don't know how much more we're going to spend on Kyrie, but I wanted to hit Raj because like you overlapped in Cleveland when you were working in the front office too, but also just speaking as a former player, I'm curious like what you thought when Kyrie forced his way out of there from a standpoint of, to me, I had never seen in my life anybody force their way away from the greatest player of a generation and away from guaranteed success. And I sort of understood it later about Kyrie wanting to, have the room to maybe grow or lead a team and not be in LeBron's shadow. Like LeBron takes up a lot of oxygen. I get that. So there was some understandable part of it, even if it didn't work out the way he hoped. But I still look back and think, man, if you're in this game to win championships, why not stay? So I'm just curious. You were gone from the organization by that point, I think. But like, what did you think at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I too kind of didn't understand it at the time because, I mean, for the foreseeable future there, it was going to be baked in success. And I think LeBron was at the stage, even at that point, where sure, the culture was his and the mentality was his, but you could even see on the court that he was fine with Kyrie being the guy at times. That wasn't ever going to be an issue. So there could have been a pretty seamless kind of passing of the torch in terms of who was going to really carry. So I didn't understand it, but I would just say this. When I talk about Kyrie looking for something and searching for something, that now looking back at it, the journey, all the ups, the downs, the massive mistakes, like all of that was part of what he was supposed to go through, I think. And none of that would have happened for him if he stays there with LeBron in the security of that shadow for a career. And I do feel like his soul was restless. Like he wanted something and he had to go out looking for it. And whether it was packaged and worked out the way that was palatable for the media or not is besides the point. It was his journey and he had to go through it. And I think we've watched him go through it. We've given him the business at times, and at times rightfully so, for some of the things that have happened along that road. But ultimately, he had to go through that. And I want to say this too, because I think it's important. We all think that like you learn to lead by being in a locker room and you get some perspective and you get older and it's going to come natural. And that's not always the way it works. Kyrie Irving's family, like Dredrick Irving was a Boston University great before I got to Boston University. So I had known Dred from like alumni games and stuff like that. He's the head of that household, like a very good dude, strong personality, like holds it down. And he leads a family, right? And so I think Kyrie at this point, as he grew older, as he had a family, he learned to lead a family. And this is kind of like, I don't know if basketball fans want to hear this. This is life. But Howard, you can speak to this. I thought I had that shit figured out. Like I didn't have kids till I was 30. And at 30, you would think I was a grown man. I was not. I had kids. Those kids got old enough to have conversations with me, for me to have them at places, for me to be afraid that the sickness that they had was going to cost me them or something like that. And only then did I grow up and learn to lead. And I think you see him like he is a result of a lot of that. Like that's what he's had going on in his life. I would just add to it that Nico and Mike Finley, and I'm getting a little choked up because Mike was my vet. Those two dudes uniquely could take a Kyrie Irving who was already on the trajectory, like with his own family, and say, hey man, let's sit down. Let's talk this out. Mike Finley was the single best example of a pro that I ever had. I mean that to this day. And I think that the combination of seeing Nico, Mike Finley, and even Jason Kidd, you know, Kyrie's a very heritage-based dude. Like, let's be frank. Like, he's never shied away from any of that. Seeing his dad himself, his sons, his family in the people that are talking to him on a daily basis, I don't think you can discount that at all.